Hey everyone, it's Allie from Astrology, and today I am doing my first video. And I'm going to be doing it with a doozy. I'm going in and talking about the Saturn Pluto conjunction that is happening on January 12th of 2020. This is happening at 23 degrees of Capricorn, and it's a pretty significant one. You guys are going to hear a lot about it from other astrologers. And the reason why is because it's a key signature for 2020. It's really going to set the tone, not only for this year, but also for the next 33 to 38 years as well. Let's give me a little bit of perspective of what this is about and tell you a little bit about me so that you have some framework. My background is in political science. I also have a master's in social work and a master's in organizational psychology. My astrology studies began when I was 12, and then I really formalized my apprenticeships in 2016 on. So all of these, I have a big theme of really being interested in the person and environment, because I don't think that these transits happen alone. And find it very interesting to find the way that they are manifesting. So let's talk a little bit about what this is going to preview. So Capricorn is the sign of, and I really want to talk about Capricorn because it's a big piece of 2020. A lot of energy is happening there. Capricorn is the sign of actually our government. It is the structures that are physically put in place to support us. It is the big boss energy. It is where we show up and how we step out into the world and how we become accountable. The people who have a lot of Capricorn energy are very mature and responsible, and they're not afraid to be in charge. Capricorn's true gift is taking the resources that it has and putting them to use effectively. It's a very slow sign, so it has a lot of patience, it has a lot of resilience, it responds to a sense of duty. But the one thing that I will say, it's some of the negative qualities to it is that it likes to go it alone, and so it can be a very withdrawn pattern or a very withdrawn person. They also have a tendency to like tradition, and they will be very rigid in clinging to their old powers and their old ways of doing things because it's always been done. Why would we need to reinvent the wheel? Well, that's when this conjunction comes up. So Saturn is the planet that traditionally was the very last, well, it is the very last visible planet to our naked eye in the universe. So old astronomers and astrologers really, that was the edge, that was the boundary. And so Saturn really likes boundaries. It is how we create structures. It's how we create our hierarchy. It is father time. It's how we show our maturity and where we go it alone. Saturn has a tendency to give us our rewards at the end of the day. So it's that energy that Saturn is the one where you show up at your performance evaluation and your boss says, why should I give you this raise or this promotion? And Saturn's like, check, check, check. Look at everything I've done. That's why I deserve the raise. So it definitely rewards us for the hard work that we put in. And so notice it's not about luck. It's not about just being in the right place at the right time. It is really, he will reward us with the work that we've put in. So Pluto, let's talk a little bit about that. Once that we had all of the science and technology kind of evolve and we now have telescopes, now Pluto is the outermost planet of our solar system. And so now he is the one who is the boundary. And so Pluto is a very small planet, but I always say you cannot go through a Pluto transit unscathed, because whatever Pluto touches will transform. He is the one who asks us, how do we become, how do we stay in our personal power as we go through absolute transformation and change? How do we own not only the light side, but also the hidden truths, so that we can integrate both the light and the dark and come to a new way of being? It really is the phoenix of the zodiac. So when these two planets meet up, you're hearing a lot of descriptive words, but the one word that I want us to focus in on this is integrity, because Pluto and Saturn are really there to ask, are the structures that we have created, does the work we put in, does it really show us our true powerful selves and our authentic selves? So that is what this transit is about. And when it is happening in Capricorn, it is really going to ask us if leadership is there to support us, if we have fully taken responsibility and demonstrated that we are our best selves. But I want to talk about how often this happens, because this is going to be a start of a new 33 to 38 year cycle. And that is because these planets are very slow. So you have Saturn that takes 29 years for it to just make one revolution around the zodiac. And then you have Pluto, and it takes 248 years for it to make one cycle of the zodiac. So as it happens, Pluto's moving really slow, and then Saturn catches up. Pluto's moving slow, Saturn catches up. So it does meet up, but it meets up every 33 to 38 years. And the reason why it's a little wonky is because Pluto's elliptical cycle is not always clear cut. He speeds up, he slows down, and it's just a very different transit. So we got a little bit of a close preview of what this transit is going to be come January, and we had that back in April of this year of 2019, where the two planets got close within degrees of each other, but they weren't right on top of each other, which is a true conjunction. The true conjunction is happening in January. So in order for us to talk about this, let's talk about how things change for us over time. And I want to give you guys more of a historical perspective. So let's go back to the 1900s. And the first conjunction of the 1900s happened in 1914. And that was happening in Cancer. And if you guys can pull on your history minds, you'll remember that that was when the outbreak of World War I happened. With that came a lot of Cancer themes. Cancer is the sign of home and traditionally motherhood and nurturing. And so what we saw was a huge rise in patriotism and nationalism. We also found a lot of starts of really big, powerful families in this, where you had the starts of like the Rockefellers started to come into power, the Kennedys for sure. But you also, on a smaller level, you had families also branding together with World War I, where you had multi-generational families now just living together. You had a very big, strong contrast where some of the women were coming out of the home to work because the men were off at war, and they were doing that in the name of nationalism and patriotism. Cancer also brings about values. So all of these themes started getting seeded at this point. And I want to talk about that because both Cancer and Capricorn are on the same axis. So a lot of the stuff that we saw back in 1914 is going to echo through. when we have this conjunction in Capricorn. Capricorn is a little bit more on an exposed front about authority versus both signs want stability. It's just that Cancer wants it in the home and Capricorn wants it in society. And so you have two big transformations happening, and you're going to see very similar themes kind of get put into check at this point. Let's fast forward a little bit and go to the next 30 years where the next conjunction happened in August of 1947. This time, both Saturn and Pluto were in Leo. And Leo asks a lot about individualization and self-expression and creativity. This happened right after World War II ended. And it was a period of huge expansion. It was a time of now the family has been asked to take over into its identity and its legacy. And it's really the heyday of the mom and pop store in the villages and the towns, where they're also expecting multiple generations to come through and do the family business. And other people and a lot of the young people in this generation are saying, no, I'm going to do my own thing, which was a bit of a challenge and a square to that. This was also, I believe, and forgive me for simplifying this, I believe it was 1948 when Pakistan and India were just one big region. And it was literally a treaty was signed, and at the stroke of midnight, people from this region went to that region, this region went and occupied the other people's homes, and that was it. It was a big division, and they were really into the self-identity of who they were. That we also had, the man's exploration of the moon and the lunar landing happening in 1956. So all of this is under the same influence of self-expression and individualism. I want to fast forward again to the last conjunction we had before this upcoming one, and this was in November of 1982. This time Saturn and Pluto were in Libra. Saturn is very strong in Libra because he likes to enforce boundaries and laws, and Libra is a sign of partnership and marriage. So here you have a renegotiation of what are my boundaries in partnerships and marriages. And this really was the height of the latchkey kid. Divorce was kind of the norm in society for about 50% of the marriages. And the kids were having to kind of do their own thing. But we also had another signature of both of this is always an economic recession. Wherever Pluto and Saturn come into play, there's always a contraction energy. So there was the economic recession. Reagan was in power. We were also at the escalation of the Cold War, where, again, as a nation, we were wondering who are our allies, who's not. I don't know if you guys remember the MX missile crisis. I'm old enough to remember doing the bomb drills where you dive under the desks. Not that that was going to save us, but it made us feel better. But that's the kind of stuff that we are now bringing forward into this next conjunction. So what is going to happen? Let's talk. So I'm going to say that we saw a little bit of the preview of like WikiLeaks coming through, where you've had Pluto moving through the signs of Scorpio and Sagittarius, where for the 40 years it's been kind of gathering secrets. It's been getting the hidden truths. And here you have Saturn and figuring out what is the philosophy. And then you have Saturn coming through with its sense of karmic justice. And it's like, okay, check please. I want to see what we've done here. So I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of checks of power, especially in our leadership. we are going to figure out what structures are in place that are working for us and what isn't. We have a sense of kind of that potential destruction piece. And I also want to put this in context as the United States is going to be going through a Pluto return in the next few years as well. So we really are on this precipice of looking at what structures are here, what laws are working, the Constitution, all of that stuff. Is this really serving us, or are we needing to alter it? And I say this just because oddly enough, I'm recording this on the day that the Democrats put forth the articles of impeachment. So I believe if we really pay attention to the timelines, it's going to be happening within, by the time this conjunction's happening is when we're going to be going through a lot of the process. But I will say this is that you're going to feel more, there's going to be probably a recession again. You're going to feel a little bit kind of sad and melancholy a little bit through the tone of 2020 because of this big energy. It's not going to be like a quick one hit, we're done. It's going to more or less set the tone. And on a personal level, it can feel very isolating. Again, both of these planets like to go it alone. And depending upon where they hit in your chart, it's going to ask you to dig deep and figure out what's working for you and how you can become more authentic and what's going to work. There will be that sense of isolation, but again, remember that it's not just happening here in the United States, it's happening everywhere. You can see kind of the signs of social revolution and leadership's getting challenged all over the place, whether it's through Brexit, which we're not really still certain what's happening with that, the Hong Kong protests, and we've even had the change of the emperor in Japan. So there's a lot going on. So people have asked, like, well, then how can you put this in perspective for me? And I will say that there will be some other transits coming through 2020 that are going to be a little bit more laced with some different types of hope, where I think we're going to see an ease in this energy when Pluto conjuncts Jupiter in Capricorn. That's going to be in April of 2020, and you're going to see almost like a power grab at that point. And then again, we're going to see another really big shift when Jupiter and Saturn are conjunct in Aquarius, and that's going to set off another 20-year cycle. So both Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by Saturn, but it functions very differently in both signs. When it's in Capricorn, it wants to know what the boundaries are so it can enforce them. When Saturn is in Aquarius, it wants to know what the boundaries are so it can push beyond that and revolutionize and evolve. So it's very different expression of kind of that same energy and that same governing planet. So I will say this is that one of the ways that you can get through this is, one of the reasons why I gave you the historical perspective is to remember that we've all gone through this before and it will happen again. But that also, when you do start to feel a little bit more emotionally withdrawn or isolated, you have a chance, that's your sign from the universe to go, oh, I need to connect. Because that's kind of what happens, is that the universe really wants us to be in balance. And when we're feeling, one way, we need to be able to balance it with something else. So I will say that this is not the time to withdraw and be isolating. This is the time to recognize that we are being challenged, but this is for growth and development and bettering of ourselves. So if you liked the video, if you liked the content that I shared and you thought it was helpful, the first thing is to please share with other people. shoot me an email. Let me know on social media. Ascent Astrology is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagrams. So yeah, just please give me a shout. I'd love to know if this is the kind of stuff you are enjoying. All right, until next time. Bye.